Princeton Open Campus Coalition is a Princeton University student-run group committed to exercising and defending academic freedom. Its only position is the existence of free speech and its commitment to its civil exercise. This podcast is dedicated to giving a voice to the free-thinking civil persons with uncommon or unwanted ideas. The individual opinions of members of the Princeton Open Campus Coalition or any other speakers invited do not represent the official Princeton Open Campus Coalition stance. To learn more, visit our website, pocc.princeton.edu.
Hello, sir. Can you see me?
Yes, can you see me?
Just fine.
All right.
Perfect. Thank you for taking a little bit of time out of your day to meet with me today and talk about free speech.
When it's over, I'll let you know whether that's a pleasure or not.
Fair enough.
All right.
Thank you. Now, let me introduce quick to those of us who haven't had gotten to know Mr. Silverglate here. He is an attorney, journalist, writer, and co-founder of the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. Mr. Harvey Silverglate has been an attorney in Cambridge, Massachusetts, working specifically in academic freedom and civil rights. He's a Princetonian, like myself, and went on to Harvard Law School and has worked with the ACLU. So if there's anything you would like to add with maybe some of your kind of current pursuits or time teaching at Harvard or anything else, please do.
Okay, first of all, my name is pronounced Silverglate. That's because it ends with an E, and so it's Silverglate. Everybody mispronounces it in one way or another.
My apologies, sir.
No, you don't have to apologize. It's the fault of an immigration officer at Ellis Island who gave the family a name that is impossible to pronounce. Okay, in any event, so my law practice focuses on, in addition to criminal defense, academic freedom and free speech, which is why Dr. Kors and I co-founded FIRE, the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. We found that colleges, which were in theory devoted to academic freedom, were among the most censorious institutions in the country. That you could actually say things, as I like to put it, I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, you could say things with impunity in Harvard Square that you go 50 yards inside Harvard Yard at the university, and you find yourself being disciplined for saying it. We were aghast at that idea. And we wrote a book about it, The Shadow University, The Betrayal of Liberty on American Campuses. And we started to get so many phone calls from students and also professors. You know, the thing that most people don't realize is professors are as subject to this kind of censorship on campus as students are. Even the professors with tenure have problems. And we got so many phone calls from people who were in trouble that we had to start a FIRE so that we could hire people, we could raise some money and then hire people to help us. I had a law practice, and Professor Kors had classes to teach, and here we were flooded with these calls. So it was really sufficiently shocking that we realized we had to start an organization to do something about this. The ACLU was not all that reliable. It's much less reliable even now. There are certain things that the ACLU doesn't like to defend, and FIRE is completely apolitical. We don't care what your politics are. we don't even care if our clients are psycho killers. Even psycho killers have free speech rights on campuses. So that's how it started. And though I expected, this will surprise you and maybe even shock you, but I expected that the situation that we were dealing with, the suppression of ideas and free speech on campuses, as well as secondarily, the absence of any notion of fairness in student disciplinary hearings, that was so absurd for a liberal arts college that all FIRE had to do was make it clear that this was absurd and that we would go out of business. I told the first board of directors of FIRE, don't worry, we're not asking you for a long-term commitment. This is such an absurd situation that I guarantee you we will go out of business in 10 years. We will not be needed. This problem will solve itself.
I wish that was the case. I wish that was the case.
Not the case. What I realized as time went on, and I saw more and more of this, is that academia seemed to be ripe for this kind of infection, and it spread like wildfire. And we're still battling, and we're battling hard. We win almost all of our cases. That's because the outside world understands how absurd these instances of censorship are and on campus. But the universities keep doing it time and time again. They seem not to get the point.
Quick question on that. What's your theory as to why academia is so susceptible to this phenomena?
Excuse me, repeat the question.
So why, you said, academia is particularly susceptible to this, to suppressing free speech. Why do you think this is? What do you think about kind of the, does it have something to do with the setup of the universities themselves, or is it kind of a systematic issue, or is it an issue with individuals, you believe?
Well, I used to think that academic freedom could flourish on campuses because the universities were kind of divorced from the rest of the world, and they didn't have to face the threats and the tumult of the rest of the world. You could sort of it was sort of like, the way monks lived in monasteries. I saw the university as a kind of a monastery for the mind, and a place where academic freedom could flourish, where you could explore the most dangerous ideas, the most abhorrent ideas. You could explore them freely because you weren't going to have the police out there second guessing you. You weren't going to have politicians second guessing you. You were free from those kind of pressures. It turns out just the opposite, that free speech seems to be more valued in what I will call the real world, that's the world outside the campus, than it is within the university. And I think part of it is that there's a certain air of unreality in the university. Maybe that's necessary for education, but it turns out that it's not very good for free speech. And because the university is a world within itself, pretty much protected from the outside, these deans can actually inflict punishment in cases of people who say bad things, offensive things, and not even think twice about it. Where in the outside world, if you bring one of these cases to a court of law, the judge would say, would you get out of here? You're wasting my time. Haven't you ever read the Constitution? He would say to a prosecutor, this person you've brought in for being fresh, get out of here. I got murders to take care of. But in the university, you have so many deans that they need something to do, and they bring these stupid cases. Do you know that when I was at Princeton, class of '64, do you know that the disciplinary apparatus consisted of one assistant dean and two proctors who went around? Proctors were kind of unarmed police. They weren't really police. They wore suits, and their main job was to make sure that the students kept the dorms clean. That they didn't have this whole army of bureaucrats who were tasked with and paid a lot of money, tasked with the job of supervising students' most intimate lives, including their speech, as well as their social lives.
Wow, it's a big change. I was just looking at FIRE's website, and I decided to search in there for Princeton, and it was a little dismal. I have to be honest. Looking on there, red box, this is take action. Not exactly what you want to see. Along with speech code rating, and you know, having been in school for most of my life, a grade of D in due process rating for sexual misconduct and C for non-sexual misconduct is not exactly what I consider to be decent grades.
Well, you know, Princeton has fallen into the trap, as so many other colleges and universities have, of thinking that in order to keep students from abusing each other, killing each other, raping each other, they have to have rules and they have to have deans to enforce the rules. The notion that if you have a sufficient IQ to get into Princeton and you're old enough, the notion that you can really take care of your life and you don't need to be micromanaged by the bureaucrats somehow has gotten lost. Why it happened, you know, I've written about it, I've spoken about it. I really don't know any more about it than I've already said.
Mm-hmm.
But what I do know is students need help from the outside to deal with these problems.
It seems, I mean, I had the pleasure of getting your book, The Shadow University. I've been perusing it over the past weekend and things. But, you know, one statement you make in here, universities have become the enemy of free society, and it's time for the citizens of that society to recognize this scandal of enormous proportions and hold these institutions to account. You know, I can see you taking some, you know, you're taking action to hold these institutes to account, but what would you suggest for students on campus or other people? How do we go about holding these institutions to account?
Well, I tell you the same thing that I tell my clients who are charged with crimes. Remember, I told you half my law practice involves defending people charged with crime. The other half involves students in disciplinary cases and free speech. And as I tell my criminal clients, the ones who are charged with crimes, one rule of thumb you must follow. If you are approached by a police officer or a detective, do not say anything, especially do not confess, because it may be that you're innocent. And yet there is a tendency of people to say, well, look, if I made a mistake, I'm sorry. Well, that's viewed in the criminal law as very close to a confession.
Wow. Okay.
And it's the same thing with students. If you are brought in because somebody has complained that you said something, you insulted them, you harassed them by saying something that was insensitive because of gender or race or religion or whatever other factor, do not confess. Do not say, I'm sorry to the dean. Say, look, I believed I was exercising my rights as a student here, as a human being, as a citizen. And if somebody was offended by what I did, have that person contact me and we'll have lunch and we'll talk about it. But do not say anything to the dean. It will be misconstrued. The next thing you know, you'll be charged in front of the tribunal and the dean will say, he confessed.
It seems, I mean, you know, reading through here, things such as the water buffalo case, things like that. I mean, it's really shocking, the extent with which extremely circumstantial evidence that any judge would laugh out of his court is being used in these cases with serious consequences for many of these.
Well, the water buffalo case, I've always thought that one of the, you know, we use that case at the beginning of the Shadow University Professor Kors represented the student because he was being charged in a student university tribunal. If he was being charged in the criminal courts, I would have ended up representing him. How do you defend somebody who is charged with such an absurd charge that by yelling, "Shut up, you water buffalo," to a group of African-American sorority sisters who were hooping it up downstairs outside his dorm when he was trying to study for finals? How do you charge him with harassment because some idiot in the bureaucracy thought that water buffalo was a large black animal found in Africa, and that he was basically using a racial epithet? First of all, you would think that somebody at a Ivy League university like the University of Pennsylvania would know that there are no water buffalo in Africa.
A minor detail.
So, small detail, but I always smiled at that one, showing the complete idiocy of the bureaucrats. He could have looked it up and found out there were no bureaucrats. That calling a black student a water buffalo was not a racial epithet. It must have been something else. What it was, because Jacobowitz, when he was a young kid, his grandmother, using Yiddish, would call him a behemoth. A behemoth is a Yiddish word that translates as some kind of a large, unruly animal, not a black animal necessarily. There was no implication of color. It was the behemoth, unruliness, and behemoth. He translated it as best he could. There is no real English word for behemoth. He translated it as water buffalo when he shouted at them. That's the origins of that story, and that's the origins of FIRE as a result of that case.
So it's entirely a cultural, his cultural upbringing, everything else, an entirely innocuous phrase. I remember reading that and just laughing outright at the level, the ludicrousness of the entire situation.
But you see, the deans who thought that was they don't deserve to be on a university campus. They have nothing to contribute to an intellectual environment on a campus. All they have to contribute is problems and idiocy and trouble. If the bureaucracy were reduced by 95%, everybody's life would be so much better.
I have there's a couple 2 points I want to touch on here in our kind of last 13 or so minutes. You signed a letter in support of Professor Katz. He had written a statement which to some was a bit inflammatory. He had called a certain political group, he called them terrorists based off of their actions and how they treated some students on campus. You signed a letter in support of him. I guess to play a bit of devil's advocate to some of your points, where do we kind of draw the line for free speech and then the issue of people being in a comfortable learning situation? How do we find this balance here, or do we need to look for a balance at all?
Let me just, there's a bit of a misconception in your question. Students not only don't have a right to be comfortable on a campus of higher education. We're not talking about kindergarten, where kids are 5 years old and you don't want to hurt their feelings. Students and colleges are adults, and they are not entitled to comfort on the campus any more than anyone is entitled to comfort in life out in the greater society. You're entitled to due process, you're entitled to the protection of laws, you're entitled to be free from physical harm and abuse, but you are not entitled to be protected from having your feelings hurt. And so on a campus, students need the right to offend because they need the right to say what's on their mind. That's part of what education is all about. So the idea that we're looking to the bureaucrats, President Eisgruber and his various assembled committees and subcommittees of deans and deanettes and assistant deans and deputy assistant deans and the whole bureaucracy, that they need to figure out how to make Princeton a comfortable place. Princeton is a university of higher education. It's not supposed to be a comfortable place. It's supposed to be an educational institution.
Challenging your preconceived notions and you as a person.
And that's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. You don't grow much in your comfort zone. I found this out the hard way. You know, what's scary to me is now, at my state of it, you know, it used to be just kind of social issues or maybe political issues to some extent. But I found in my time at college, it's economics, it's the hard sciences even, that if you make a heterodox statement to you can face some serious social and even cross lines with university policy. And I don't know, I find that very concerning.
Yeah, it's very concerning. It's probably the single most concerning sub-issue of the whole problem, the policing of language, the language police. In a free society, that you can be penalized for saying something inside of Harvard yard in the university that you could say with complete impunity 30 feet outside the Harvard gates in Harvard Square, which is part of the city of Cambridge. The notion that you could be freer outside rather than you are inside the university is exactly the opposite of what it was supposed to be. The university was supposed to be a place where you could let your guard down, say what's on your mind, and actually have challenging intellectual discussions about the hard issues in life. That's what education is all about. And instead, these are becoming elementary schools where the teachers are trying to protect and the administrators are trying to protect the feelings of the students rather than educate them.
Well, and it seems that that what they're doing is operating counterfactual even to their intention. You see, example, University of Michigan had a people of color cafe and a non-people of color cafe, and frankly, I don't see that contributing to helping race relations at all.
Lawyers like me, civil liberties lawyers, spent an awful lot of time and money fighting against that in the real world, out here in the real society, so that it's no longer legal to have a cafe for Black people and a cafe for Hispanic people, a cafe for white people, a cafe for Jewish people, a cafe for Catholics.
We've come so far, we're back at it again.
That is not legal out here in the real world. It is now becoming kind of de rigueur on the campus. It's insane. It's counterproductive, and it's insulting. And yet they get away with it. Any dean who organized a cafe for white students and a cafe for Black students, I would fire him instantly for segregating the campus. We went through that. We had a civil war. We had the riots in the North and in the South, the race riots. We've been through that. We got over that. We've arrived at the point where we have made a decision. We're going to have an integrated society, except in the colleges. You got African American dorms, white dorms. What? This would be a crime out here in the real world.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I'm thinking about is the Department of Education's investigation into Princeton University. Kind of a big set of news for us here.
It's a big set of news nationally, actually.
It seems Princeton is caught between a rock and a hard place. Either they declare that they're a racist institution, like they have, and systematically racist, and they potentially are on the hook for millions of dollars, or they deny their previous statements. You know, where do you think Eisgruber has to go from here? What do you think he needs to do in order to reconcile the Princeton community on this?
Okay, first of all, you were accurate in everything you said, except the way you started out the discussion. Princeton didn't find itself between a rock and a hard place. It didn't find itself in a tough position. Princeton was put there by President Eisgruber, who wrote an absolutely absurd, self-flagellating letter about, oh, woe is us. We are such a segregationist institution. We have such a bad history. It is so hard for minority group members here at Princeton. We must make it easier for them. We must devote more resources to this issue of race and the issues of gender equality. And the Department of Education reads this. I mean, they do read a letter from the president going out to all of the alumni. You have to understand that among the alumni, there's got to be one or two people in the administration who work for the Department of Education who got this letter and read it and had the same reaction I did. What is wrong with this guy? And what is wrong with that campus? And why is he saying that Princeton is treating its African-American students so badly? We better look into it.
Mm-hmm.
So he started, what an idiot. Doesn't anybody read over something before he sends it out? Hundreds of thousands of alumni.
He's supposed to be some big constitutional scholar, I hear, maybe a candidate for the courts. So I don't know. I don't know what quality they're pumping out now for this, but.
Well, it's a kind of self-flagellation that seems to be de rigueur these days. Princeton isn't perfect. Sure, there are things Princeton can do, but you read his letter, how the organization, this effort is going to. You know how many more deans they're going to have to hire?
Mm-hmm.
It's a full employment program for more college bureaucrats. I would hope that what he would do is he would sit down, he would think about what he has done, he would think about Princeton, and he would withdraw the letter and not issue a new one and not appoint all these committees and figure out, does Princeton really need any special programs? Consult with the students, consult with the faculty, consult with alumni. I think that what he would find out is, no, it probably doesn't, but maybe there should be more resources for helping students who are having trouble academically. That's fine. But the idea of setting up bureaucracies to control students' lives so that nobody is offended. How can you go through 4 years of Princeton and not be offended? It means you haven't attended any classes. It means that you live alone. You eat in your dorm. You don't go into any club or commons. It's impossible to go through a year of life without offense as a possible. At a college campus where you're supposed to be exploring new ideas, challenging ideas, that's a particularly vulnerable environment for being offended. So offense, nobody's shooting at you, they're just saying words, big deal.
Fair enough. Well, I want to be super respectful of your time. We only have a couple minutes before we reach that 30-minute mark. But I guess kind of my last question would be, what do we lose when we just surround ourselves in people who have similar ideals and have this kind of confirmation bias? What is lost to the academic community there?
Well, what is lost is a liberal arts education. The only schools which come close to the description of a place which is homogeneous, where you're not challenged that much by other people's beliefs, is parochial education. There are parochial institutions. Jews have yeshivas, Catholics have Catholic universities, but even those schools accept students of different beliefs. Boston College, the Catholic college here in the Boston area, has quite a few students who are not Catholics. If you go there, you expect that you're going to be largely in a Catholic environment. And so you don't get insulted, you don't get upset by it. You chose to be in that kind of environment. But for the most part, in liberal arts education, you're going into a university or a college which is extraordinarily diverse in every possible way. Nationality, race, religion, political view. You have to assume that you're going to face 4 years of real challenge, and that's why you came. That's part of education. And any dean or university professor or officer or president who tries to make you feel comfortable is cheating you. You're paying, what, 60 or 70 grand a year to be there. The least you're entitled is not to be cheated, but to given a real education.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. I greatly appreciate getting this chance to talk with you. I think the people listening will be encouraged and a bit challenged by what you have to say. So I appreciate that, and we're going to continue the fight for free speech in our respective domains. So,
and you can tell students, anyone who has a question or comment, they can email me at harvey@harveysilverglate.com. I answer all of my email. That's insane, but I do it anyway. I find that challenging myself, and I have not had the career yet that you've had. So that's quite a statement. But hey, I really do appreciate your time here. Thanks. I think I'm done with the recording, but you know what? I just want to take a second and say, hey, I know how busy you are. I really appreciate this. And when I'm done kind of putting this together, I'll send you a copy so you can. Good.
Click.
Thank you. You did a good job.
Hey, thanks. I appreciate it. Did you enjoy yourself? That's the real question here.
Yeah, well, I get all heated up talking about the subject. I did enjoy it, yeah.
Okay, perfect. That's what I like to hear. Have an excellent day, sir.
Thank you.
Bye.